Hello, Zuko here.
When 8-year-old me watched Avatar: The Last Airbender on my Mickey Mouse TV for the first time, I just knew that she was going to be a good show. I knew she was going to be something special. And I was right, because as I've grown up, Avatar: The Last Airbender has only stood the test of time, not only as one of my favorite childhood TV shows, but just as one of my favorite film properties ever, because as far as I'm concerned, nothing can top it. Especially when we're talking about villain to hero arcs. Till this day, Zuko stands as one of the best written TV show villains I have ever come across. Now, if you haven't heard of Avatar: The Last Airbender, that's kind of crazy. Just hop off my channel right now, go to Netflix, watch the cartoon specifically. Don't watch the movie, don't watch the live action show. Watch the cartoon, the OG, the real thing. Come back to this channel and y'all will, I'm sure, agree with me in what I'm saying in this video. Avatar: The Last Airbender is an animated television series that aired between 2005 to 2008 on Nickelodeon. It takes place in a fictional world where people can manipulate like the four elements, so water, earth, fire, air. The story tells the journey of Aang, the Avatar, and he has all four elements. So he's essentially tasked with having to save the world after the Fire Nation has attacked the other nations and have been in war for the last 100 years. And so Aang is the one that essentially has to save the world. Also, as Aang is on this journey, he's essentially being hunted down by the Fire Nation, and most specifically the prince of the Fire Nation known as Zuko. So that's who this video is all about today, him and his wonderful story arc. We're first introduced to Zuko as he is the banished prince from the Fire Nation, and one of the main things that we get to know about him like right off the bat is that this man wants his honor, and in order to get it, he has to capture the Avatar.
I need to capture the Avatar!
It goes a lot deeper than this, obviously, because not only does he have to capture the Avatar just for his honor, but his honor is directly tied to his means of returning home and gaining the respect from his father is all hinging on his capture of Aang. And as the show progresses, we see more of what this truly means for him as we are introduced to his family, most specifically his father and his sister Azula. Honestly, Ozai is awful. Fire Lord Ozai, we can all agree, is just not a great dad. He's just not a great person. Clearly, he's not borderline, he's literally abusive, both to Azula and Zuko, which I think just adds another complexity to it, because both characters aren't just cookie cutter, I'm just evil for the sake of being evil. So he's banished by his father. Ozai's terrible. Zuko's just been through a lot. His entire family has just been through a lot, not just with his father, but also neglect his mom, who was also banished when he was younger. So throughout the first season, we really just see Zuko struggling. And so when it comes to Zuko's overall storyline, it's very up and down. Like, obviously, it's not one linear story, and the writers really understand who he is and understand how difficult it is for him to let go of his father's approval and his desire for that. And so we see him through the first and second season. We see him going through these ups and downs of his inherent goodness and then having to reconcile that with wanting to be by his father's side, and how difficult it is for him to navigate all of that. And the show does a phenomenal job at really fleshing out his story through showing little seeds of his redemption arc, but not quite diving into it until he fully earns it, in a sense. We see several key turning points through his encounters with Aang, specifically after he essentially rescues Aang from Commander Zhao in season 1 as the Blue Spirit. That was like the very first time we really see him contemplating, is this truly what I want for myself? Is this truly what it means to be the Prince of the Fire Nation? It's also the first time that we really see a real raw interaction between him and Aang. We also have his Uncle Iroh, of course, my favorite character from the show. His character is there to act as guidance to help Zuko see a different path from the path that he believes is set in stone by his family. The show does a wonderful job of highlighting the bond between Zuko and Iroh, and how Iroh essentially takes on the mantle and takes the place of Ozai, where Ozai lacks in terms of his paternal instincts. The Siege of the North episode is also a very significant part of Zuko's journey throughout the entire show. We as an audience kind of get a little bit more insight into his actions, especially because we learn that he's always been compared to his sister, and so we really get a full picture of why he's been so adamant throughout this entire journey, not just because he wants to return home and regain his honor, but also because his entire life he's been told that he's just not good enough. And so we get a little bit more depth with his character there. After the Siege of the North, which is at the end of Season 1, we then jump into Season 2 with Zuko and Iroh essentially cutting off all ties with the Fire Nation after Azula tries to trick them to capture them as prisoners back to the Fire Nation. This is where we really see things starting to pick up with Zuko, him realizing that maybe my family's not that great. Like, my sister hates me, my dad's awful, like, what's going on here? Season 2 is also where we get the Zuko alone episode, which is hands down one of my favorite episodes of the entire show. It's just one of those episodes that the animation is just impeccable, the choreography, just everything about it is great. But of course, at the core of it, it's just all about Zuko. We learn so much about, again, his childhood in terms of what happened to his mom. We learn so much about his relationship with his sister, and just his whole entire family dynamic, and just how crazy and messed up it is. And we really see this more human side of Zuko. We see how much turmoil the poor guy has been in from the moment that he was essentially born into that family, quite honestly. I also think this episode just does a great way of really putting into perspective Zuko's entire arc. Season 2, in general, is just a really transformative season for Zuko. We see him obviously completely being untethered from the whole I have to hunt down the Avatar thing, because him and Iroh are refugees in the Earth Kingdom. We see him kind of leave behind, well, initially, we see him leave behind this life of hunting down the Avatar. We see him kind of just being a normal teenager, like a normal human being, and really get a glimpse of who he could have been, essentially, if he hadn't been born into the family that he was born into. But unfortunately, as I said, Zuko's entire story is obviously not linear, and it's very, very messy. And so by the end of Season 2, we reach the episode of the Crossroads of Destiny. And this is where Zuko has to make a choice to either give up this pursuit of the Avatar, essentially joining the Avatar, joining Iroh, and fighting against the Fire Nation, or choosing his sister, Azula, in order to gain his honor back and remain a part of the Fire Nation. This episode alone just shows how well the writers of the show really understand Zuko's character, because we see how much turmoil he goes through from the beginning of the show till up until this point. We see how difficult it's been for him to reconcile his goodness and upbringing. The writers knew that if they had just let him turn to Team Avatar now, it just wouldn't have been as powerful. By showing Zuko reverting back to his old ways, it really shows the complexity of the human condition for a lot of us in general, outside of just Avatar. When it comes to trauma, it's not always, as I said, it's not always linear, and so sometimes we have good days and we have bad days, and sometimes we go back to very dark places, and sometimes it's really hard to give up things that we're used to, especially when it comes to your family. It's really hard to just turn your back on certain things. Then jumping into Season 3, and this is where we also see Zuko really having to deal with the repercussions of his choice to betray his uncle, most specifically, and also betraying Team Avatar. And we really see how he's just spiraling and having to deal with the fact that he made the wrong decision, especially as we see him reintegrate back into being the prince of the Fire Nation, because it's at this point that he truly realizes essentially what Iroh was trying to tell him this whole time, that your perception sometimes and the things that we think we want isn't always what we need. And so we see him just being not fulfilled. And it's specifically in these moments we really start to see his complexity as a character, and it's really when we start to emotionally resonate with him. And then by the middle of Season 3, Zuko finally has the pinnacle of his turning over of a new leaf and truly stepping into his own outside of what his father wanted for him, truly realizing what he wants for himself, and that is to defeat his father and help the Avatar restore peace to the world. This is also where we really see that the writers understand Zuko's character so well, because the writers knew that in order for Zuko's character to really overcome the real root of his problem, he had to stand up to his father. Ozai's hold on Zuko's perception of honor and his destiny, and he needed to overcome that by essentially standing up to his father and telling him, like, no, what you want and what you believe the world to be is not okay, and I'm going to stand up to you and I'm going to fix it. And at this point, even though he's turned over a new leaf and he's, on his way to join Team Avatar, we see that they don't make it easy for him, which again is just another testament to the great writing of the show. because it shouldn't be easy for him to just join them. He has to earn their trust back, especially in terms of Katara, because she was initially the one that he betrayed. And so we see him continuing this redemption not only within one moment or one episode, but it transforms and it continues. And we see him growing this bond with different members of Team Avatar. We see his character change in such a beautiful way from where we initially saw him to where he is now. And just seeing him completely find peace in helping the Avatar and being a part of Team Avatar, it just enhances his overall journey and just everything that has to do with his character development. Overall, Zuko's nuanced character development, from his rejection of his family's toxic legacy to his seeking redemption by joining Team Avatar, is just a masterclass of how to write multi-dimensional characters through detailed world building and storytelling. And honestly, I feel like most shows and movies should just take a lesson from Avatar: Last Airbender. But until then, Zuko still remains not just as one of the best written story arcs in Avatar, but also as one of the most compelling characters in television history. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for future content. As always, thanks for being on this ride with me, and I'll see you when I see ya. Bye guys.